All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Liberty in Crisis is this unit's title. Before we get into it, we need to review our 4 liberty documents. Hold on, we'll get to the slide. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important. It is absolutely critically important that you remember these documents because this creates a freaking war out of it. That's how important these documents are to us in our history. They go to war over violation of these 4 documents you've just studied. Let's review 1100 Charter Liberties. No government official is above the law, no inheritance tax, and general freedoms of the people. Again, this is just a summary, a brief overview of the 1100 Charter of Liberties. Keep these things in the back of your mind as we go through a 13-year period that leads us to the Declaration of Independence. You cannot understand our Constitution and the way we operate in this country unless you understand the rights that these British citizens has had violated. And they did not want that to happen again. I'm just doing an overview. We could add a few more things in there. I stand correct, it's 113 slides.
Holy turnbuckers.
What's that? I thought it was 113. I just looked. It says 111. Magna Carta. Very, very important provisions. Parliamentary government. It's what we call representative government. Again, no government official above the law. Taxation only through representation. Due process rights. Speedy trial. As we go through, gentlemen, I don't have time to edit everything out. As we go through this unit, keep remembering what it is that our forefathers were so outraged over and why. We'll have a debate. Don't worry about that. Petition of Right, 1628. Taxation through representation. Martial law may not be imposed in the time of peace. Prisoners must be able to challenge their detentions through a writ of habeas corpus. Troops may not be quartered against the will of the residents in due process. Yes, Chappie.
How was the conversation this weekend at your dinner table with your wife?
After.
He wants to talk about it, but he knows he can't.
Now remember these provisions here, and do we have English colonies in North America by now? By 1628? Oh yes. Oh yes. These Englishmen are very much aware of this petition of right, that they are part, they have the same rights as if they were sitting on the island of Great Britain. Take a look at the English Bill of Rights, 1689. The monarch could rule by consent of the Parliament. No taxation without the consent of Parliament. The right to petition the king for redress of grievance. That's going to play a major role in what comes up. No quartering of troops during peacetime. And the right to bear arms. They have a right to firearm and gunpowder and munitions ownership. And that included cannons and any other weapons that was available to the military. There was no distinction between military weapons and private weapons or citizen weapons. They were all the same. give you a little bit of a heads up or a word of advice when you, or it would not necessarily be a bad thing for you to print off the notes from our website, and then you could add to them, because you'd already have this, to your notes. Not to me. I don't care what it costs you. But I have it set up where it's 3 slides per page. So that's what I'm saying. You print it off, not me. Yep, or you can for free write them down. My point is, if you have a tough time keeping up, then you'd have what's on the slide, and then you'd only have to add the additional. Just something to think about. And the last couple of the Bill of Rights: freedom of speech and no excessive bail. Freedom of speech. What kind of speech do you think they need freedom for? Okay, true. And Harlan's on to something as well. Insulting, different perspectives. The speech that needs protected, it's not the speech that we like. It is the speech that we today call hate speech. That is protected. Because speech that we like doesn't need protected, does it? But the speech that we don't like is what's protected. So you're going to see a lot of debate, gentlemen. You're going to see a lot of debate about so-called hate speech on whether it should be allowed or not allowed. Okay? You will almost always find a court will always allow so-called hate speech. In fact, there's no legal term for hate speech. That's propagandized language. No court has called anything hate speech. They've called everything free speech, including burning the flag, including refusing to say the pledge. That's all considered free speech.
It is free speech.
The court says it is.
Because that's what we practice, our right to have anything.
But see, there's very few things that offends people more than burning the flag. But that's allowed. Now, doesn't mean you're not going to have consequences for it. What's that?
It offends people who don't even serve this country. But yet they love America so much, yet they don't go serve for it.
True. That's very true. But see, remember, it is the speech that we don't like is what's protected. Remember that when you hear people say hurtful things, they have a right to say it.
They really do. Just like we have the right to shower and clothes.
Couple more. No cruel and unusual punishment. The right to trial by jury of peers. Very important. That's going to play a role. And the right to due process. All of these are going to play a major role in what's coming up. Now, it's something to remember. People who are not English, who are not Englishmen, who are not naturally born Englishmen, do not have these rights anywhere else in the world. This is very uniquely British. And because of this, British people see themselves as being something special. They're kind of a class above everyone else because they have certain natural rights that is recognized. All right, that's your overview. Now we're going to start with the writ of assistance. Now, let me give you a little bit of a background here. The 7 Years' War, which was the first global war, just ended. 1756, something like that. Our portion of this war is called the French and Indian War, our being North America's. It cost a lot of money to fight that war. And you already found out $1.5 million is what the British government owed. And by the way, it's my understanding the British people are still paying that loan off. what it costs for the 7 Years' War. That's what I heard a professor say about a year ago. Still paying it off. So, they got to make some money. They've got to somehow raise some revenue to pay this debt. Well, first of all, you need to understand what a writ of assistance is. It's simply, it is a, put it in another way, a blank check, if you will, a blank search warrant. Any customs official could write it and then compel the local law enforcement to help them serve it. And it could be, I'm going to search his house, but it doesn't say what, and it doesn't say what time. It's just, like I said, a blank check. And anybody could come in, these custom officials could come into your home and start searching for anything they wanted. And sometimes they might find something they're not even looking for, but maybe you shouldn't have it. Maybe it's something that you're criticizing the king for, which is something you shouldn't do at this time period. And you can end up in jail for that.
So on a search warrant, they have a certain time that they're going to go to your house or whatever?
Time and exactly what room they're going to look and what they're looking for. The writs of assistance first was authorized by an act of parliament under King Charles II. So it's not the first time, but this is where it's going to hit North America in particular, 1763. It was designed, like I said, to help custom officials look for smuggled goods. Now, why are they being smuggled? To avoid the import taxes. If you can sneak in a bottle of rum, have it buried in something, and sneak through the customs officials, then you could sell that for a higher profit. But if they know that you brought it in on that ship as an import, they're going to tax it, they're going to get their piece, and it's going to cut into your profits. So they would go to the houses where, say, merchants, and see if they had any products that should have been taxed that was not. And they would come any time of the day, and while they're in there, they'd be looking for anything, especially, and this was used as a way to get back at their enemies. This was not used strictly for checking, this is the context for smuggled goods, but they were using it to harass people. They were using it to, I'm going to find, I know John's doing something, so I'm going to go in there, and we're going to find a crime. Or they'd be jailed, they'd be fined, probably lose their products. James Otis Jr., this strapping older man, he argued before the Superior Court in Boston, and he raised the doctrine of natural law underlining the rights of citizens. He argued that such writs, even if authorized by Parliament, was null and void. Even if authorized by Parliament, it's null and void. He pointed back to the fundamental English constitutional law: taxation without representation is tyranny. This is basically the first time, some historians will argue, this is the first time that phrase is used when he's arguing in Boston's court. Taxation without representation is tyranny. When you don't get a say in how much you're going to be taxed, that is tyranny, is what he's saying. So you will want to know what he argued. So maybe make a star, highlight something, and that he is the one that coined the phrase, taxation without representation is tyranny. All right, John Adams, he said of Otis's 5-hour speech in Boston about these abuses, quote, "The child of independence was then and there born, for every man of an immense crowded audience appeared to me to go away as I did, ready to take arms against the writ of assistance." What he's saying here is the birth of the revolution began here with his 5-hour speech. Next slide. Oh, by the way, you don't have to write this down. Sorry. I'm going to tell you. This is just, I'm reiterating what I'm trying to do here is reiterate the importance of James Otis Jr. and his case against the writs of assistance. All right. The Molasses and Sugar Act. By all accounts, this really begins our troubles. Parliament passes a modified version of the Sugar and Molasses Act in 1733, and the original one was 1733. It was about to expire, so they created a new act to renew that revenue source. And in particular, the first, it was the Molasses Act first, and then this Sugar Act. The American Revenue Act is also called the Sugar Act. We'll just use the term the Sugar Act. But just understand, if you're reading history, you may, especially if it's from the British perspective, they're going to call it the American Revenue Act. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about that has two names, because it's from two different perspectives. British perspective and the colonist perspective. Colonial merchants were required to pay what is referred to as 6 pence per gallon. One way to look at it is perhaps 6 cents, but in today's dollars, that's $4.57 on the importation of foreign molasses. For every gallon, they had to pay an additional $4.57. That's a lot of money, even for today. We would not pay $4.57 on a gallon of syrup. We complain about the 6 cents per dollar. So that's a lot of money back then on foreign molasses. Now, the colonists mostly evaded, in other words, avoided this tax. They smuggled it in. But as a result, they also seen an increased naval presence and active custom enforcement. So, they had more British Navy out in the oceans looking for smugglers. And those custom agents would be using the writs of assistance to come and look in people's homes to see if they had any untaxed molasses. What's that? They have some kind of taxing system, whether it be a piece of paper or a stamp or something. Did you get what you needed from that slide? Okay. The Sugar Act reduced the rate of the molasses tax from $4.57 to $2.29 a gallon, which is 3 pence. But Parliament took measures to strictly enforce the tax. The act also listed more foreign goods to be taxed. So they lowered the tax on molasses, which was a major product that was used all over the colonies in their rum making and other products. That was their major sweetener. We use sugar today. Back then it would have been molasses. So now they're going to, with the Sugar Act, they are taxing less on the molasses, but now they're taxing more products. Sugar, wine, coffee, different types of ink, printed calico. And they also started regulating exports on lumber and iron. For example, remember, under mercantilism, these colonists should be harvesting raw iron and lumber trees to be sold and sent to Great Britain. Well, if that's the only place you can sell it to, then you're stuck at paying whatever price that merchant wants to pay for it. But if you're on the open market, you could sell your trees to whoever's willing to pay you more, and it might be France. It might be the Dutch. It might be Spain. And that's what the colonists were doing. They were sending the raw products elsewhere. Who was willing to pay more? And now Parliament says, nah, you're going to have to pay a tax on that now. Not only do we not want you doing it, but if you're going to do it, you're going to have to pay a huge tax, which made it impossible for them to sell to the foreign countries. No. Well, in British Parliament, they believe they do. You're going to see this. Well, that's the colonist perspective for sure. But you're going to see that argument coming up next, or soon. The excessive taxation and regulation of molasses caused an immediate decline in the colonies' economies. The new duties was to sharply reduce the trade with all import destinations for lumber, flour, cheese, and assorted farm products. It reduced the markets to which the colonies could sell and the amount of currency available to them to purchase British manufactured goods. So here's how it's reducing the currency. If you're doing all the buying from imports, then your money is leaving the colonies, going to Great Britain in particular. But Great Britain is buying very little from you. That's what we deal with China. We have a huge trade deficit. A lot of our money, most of our money, if I can argue that way, it's going to China because go to Walmart. What is everything made in Walmart? China. Every time you make a purchase, you're sending that dollar bill to China. Whereas if you buy it by American made, then the dollar stays in the United States. And the currency stays here. But every time you spend money, and that product is being made out of country, that dollar goes overseas. And China buys very little from us. So most of that money does not come back. That's what's happening in the colonies. Yes? Well, like China says, there's little I need from you. I can make it all. What they don't have is enough food. We probably do more trading with them or sell more farm products, beans, rice, that kind of stuff, than anything else to them. Because they have so many, they don't grow enough rice because of how many people they have to feed.
Wait, so that's why they have a kid limit, that's why they have...
Yes.
So why don't they just do what Spanish did, kill like half of them?
They do.
Serious?
You have more than 2 kids, more than one girl, one of them's going to be aborted. You are forced to have an abortion, and if you don't, and they find out you have an unauthorized kid, they will kill that kid. Well,
Or do this the lucky number of 2 females?
something to think about, though. We don't have time to debate this today, but something to think about. We're so outraged by China's 2-child policy, but we don't have a problem in this country, it seems, to allow abortion. Hang on. Well, so do those parents in China. See, that's the argument, but it doesn't hold logical sense. Hold that thought. This will be a debate topic in the future. But I find that interesting. We're outraged by the China's 2-child policy, but we tolerate, some would argue even worse, through our abortion laws in this country. Some make that argument, but hold that thought. We don't have time to get in that debate. I want to have that debate, just not today. All right, September 1st, 1764, Parliament passes the Currency Act. So here's what's going on. This is why Parliament does this. The colonists was printing their own money. They had their own currency. In fact, I have replicas of their currency in my drawer over here, and we probably won't pull it out today based on time, but maybe tomorrow I'll let you take a look at their different currencies. But they would coin their own money. Every colony had their own coinage. Some of them would even use paper money. And that's how they were paying for their products in Great Britain. The problem is, it's not worth as much as the sterling silver, which is, or they're called the British pound, which is what Great Britain uses. Yes, Michaela.
So, you said they were making their own money and using it to print, but based off of what we have in America, we back up all that money by gold. After World War II, I believe, we had like all the world's gold or something, and then that's what we base our currency off of now. But how were they basing their currency off? How did it have value to them?
Okay. You are factually incorrect regarding the gold issue. We left the gold standard in the 1930s.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
Yeah, you're way off.
In 1971, we came off the silver standard and became what's called fiat money. The only thing the U.S. dollar is based on is that people trust that the United States will always have value in its money. It's worth nothing other than the mere fact that we think it does. There's no money, there's no gold, no silver backing it up. I have dollar bills in my drawer here that are silver certificates. That money in the 1930s that I have here was backed up by silver. I could get $1 worth of silver. We don't do that anymore. Now it says Federal Reserve note. What is a note in financial terms?
IOU.
It's an IOU. It's a promise that it will be worth something. But that silver certificate was a promise it will always be worth an ounce or $1 worth of silver, excuse me. It was based on the value of silver. We don't do that anymore. Huh? Kennedy?
Wasn't he trying to actually make back up the United States money with gold and silver?
I have heard that.
That's what I was.
We were on the silver standard then, and it was President Nixon that took us off, through the Federal Reserve, that took us off this silver standard.
I remember John F. Kennedy talking about him actually. He wanted to actually put the standard back.
Yeah. If we was to go back to that, that would stop our government having a shutdown. You know why? If they don't have the gold to back up the printing of the money, they can't print money. That's why our government wanted to come off the gold and silver standard, so we could just print money whenever we want it. And since all the world has to use the U.S. dollar to buy oil, guess who controls the rest of the economy in the world? The United States does. And that's why China and Russia would like to see us toppled financially, because then because right now they got to play by our rules. But if they can topple our financial system, then another currency takes its place. And it won't be the U.S. dollar. That means now we get to play second fiddle. We have to play by somebody else's rules. And those rules won't favor us. Yes?
Wait, so
Okay. That's all right. So because the colonists are printing their own money, therefore kind of what they're doing is, in a lot of ways, gypping the creditors off in Great Britain, because the $1 of the continental dollar is not worth as much as the sterling dollar, or the sterling pound is what it's called. By the way, to answer your question, they would use gold and silver for their coinage and copper, but they were making it less and less of value by adding other impurities to it, like a metal called pewter, and they'd add maybe nickel to it, which again, you would have what looked like a gold coin or a silver coin, but it was not 100%. It was not 99% pure. So you truly weren't having the same value. It's like our copper penny. Our copper penny is not pure copper. So you're not really getting a penny's worth of copper, that value is not there. In 1975, my family drove to Alaska from Indiana. Gas was 25 cents a gallon, and my dad complained about how high it was. What is gas now? And we're happy about $2.35 right now. Gas did not change. The value of our dollar did. It takes more of it to get the same product.
Your dad complained about what?
25 cents a gallon of gas. Yeah, he would be just astonished. And we tolerate it. See, he remembered when gas was 5-10 cents a gallon.
And he complained about that too.
I don't know. He didn't get a car until he was probably 30, 25, 30. 40s and 50s. Yeah. So, the Currency Act, in order to, well, first of all, you need to understand, the Currency Act officially assumes control of the colony's currency system. In other words, now by controlling the currency system, you can control the colonist through their economic system. It also establishes what is called a vice admiralty court, which is basically a navy court. A military court does not have a jury. A military officer is the judge and jury. And it was considered superior to the colonial courts. So if you got caught smuggling or violating the Currency Act, you'd be arrested and tried in this court. Now, I've already given you some hints. Why would the colonists have a problem with this? With this court?
Because they're not there.
Who's not there?
Like, you're not in Britain, so why should that apply to them over here?
Why, okay, so I mean, why would why would British people and the island of Great Britain have a problem with this? Itzel? Oh, Jaslyn? I don't know why her name came to mind. Jaslyn?
On that question, I was thinking because their peers weren't the ones.
Come on, you got it. What's
Trial
trial by a jury of their peers, right? Yes, violating fundamental English rights. They do not or will not have a trial by the jury of their peers. We will pick up with this tomorrow. Okay?